everybody. I hope you are having a great Saturday. What's up? What's up? And I hope you are having a great weekend as well. My name is Don Terrell, and I want to welcome you to another spectacular episode of The Color of Motion, where I like to say stories come in all shades. And I highlight people of color and diverse backgrounds in the industry of motion graphics, animation, visual effects, cartoons, and comics. This space that I'm just ecstatically crazy about. Again, I want to welcome you to the show. You know the drill. Jump on, say hey, where you're tuning in from, so I can give you a big shout out for sure. Mr. Higgins, appreciate you tuning in there, my man, and checking out the show. It was great connecting with you the other day, so hopefully you will enjoy the show. And like I said, make sure you hop in. It looks like I'm getting some good engagement from LinkedIn. I know last week LinkedIn kind of crapped out on me there for a little bit, and it's good to see that it's working fine now. Shout out to you. Appreciate you. Shout out. Make sure that you get connected with Ecamm. Give Ecamm permission so you can interact with the broadcast. That way I can see who you are. Give you a shout out as opposed to you showing up as LinkedIn user or Facebook user. For sure, I always like to give people a name shout out for sure, and to do that you need to let Ecamm get connected with you. So go to ecamm.com/connect. That way it'll give Ecamm permission, and like I said, I can see your name and everything. Also, make sure that you get connected with us over in the Facebook group community, facebook.com/groups/The Color of Motions. Become a part of the community. It's growing. We're having a lot of fun and a lot of engagements, and I definitely don't want you to, miss out on anything for sure. Mr. Paul Berry, appreciate you tuning in, jumping on and tuning in. Always appreciate you supporting the show for sure. Mr. Alex, what's going on, my man? I appreciate you stopping by and checking out the show. We definitely been got to connect because we've been kind of missing each other, and definitely want to get you on the show for sure. Yep. Ecamm.com/connect gives Ecamm permission to pull your information. So like I said, we can see your face, and I can give you the shout out that you so richly deserve. Before we get going here, always like I said, make sure that you connect with me on my other social channels. Definitely want you to hear from you, be a part of the show. Let me know what you think about it. Any guests you may want me to like to try and get on is always a good thing for sure. But here you can find all my other social channels like Instagram, and connect with me there as well. Like I said before, we live stream to YouTube, LinkedIn, and the Facebook groups and pages. But I always like people and encourage people to hop on over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification. More importantly, comment and give a thumbs up. There you won't miss out on any of the great content going up on the channel. Plus, you'll be able to check out all the other past great episodes and people we've had on the show. We've got a lot of great people on the show. So definitely don't want you to miss out. So hop on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Mr. DeMille, let me hop back over to this scene here. Mr. DeMille, as always, I appreciate you supporting the show. He was a great guest a couple of weeks ago. Looking forward to having him back on as well. Mr. Paul Berry, what's up? Alex, he's giving you a shout out there, Alex. So again, I appreciate you always tuning in. My guests always tuning in and checking out the show. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while. Before we get going, just want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, DG Graphics. They do all the graphics, overlays, animations. They make the show look amazing. And if you're a business or a brand that's looking to take your brand to the next level, visually wise, or looking to start a live stream show yourself, you should definitely reach out and connect, because they can set you up right, for sure. All right. Like I said, we're getting some good engagements there. Saying it's for Mac users. You still should be. Like I said, I don't have my LinkedIn. Even though I'm watching it on my homepage, I'm not in the broadcast, so I'm not sure. LinkedIn user, your name, but even though it's Mac-based, Ecamm is, you should still give you permission, whether you're PC or Mac-based, to pull your information. But at any rate, I appreciate you commenting for sure, Mr. Alex. Woo woo. Yes, yes. Appreciate ya. Salute Dion. Yes. Oh, that must be Dion. Yeah, Dion must be checking in there. All right. Yeah, so this is going to be a good episode here because, like I said, Dion was on last season 1 and had a good conversation about this very topic. So we're about ready to dive right in. I don't think I'm missing anything, but if any rate, I'll pick it up on the tail end for there. Oh, it's Elizabeth. Hey, appreciate you tuning in there, Elizabeth. It's been a minute for sure, but I see you're doing big things. So I'm always excited to have past guests on for sure. And like I said, I'm watching you. You're doing some amazing stuff. So I appreciate you stopping by for sure. And Alex appreciates it as well. Hola, Elizabeth. Hola. Yes. All right. I'm with you, my man, Alex. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. All right there. My next guest is a creative entrepreneur with a focus on publishing and writing comic books and graphic novels and screenplays. As an entrepreneur, he is the founder of the U.S. registered startup Skylarkin Media Inc., which is the business daddy of the Caribbean's first mobile distribution platform for regional comic books, Alluhwi Comics. His recent successes include leading his team to being one of the 10 finalists in the Goddard Enterprises Ltd 100th Anniversary Entrepreneurship Competition. That's a mouthful. Second place validation stage at the Caribbean Tech Entrepreneurship Program. Second place at the Caribbean Startup Summit Pitch Competition 2019, as well as second runner-up at the Animae Caribe Caribbean Development Bank Animation and Gaming Accelerator Pitch Content 2019 in Trinidad and Tobago. He can often be found entertaining himself with various computer games, such as the action role-playing games Dragon Age Origins, as well as real-time strategy favorites such as StarCraft II, Company of Heroes, and the modern XCOM franchise Bridgeland Volume 1 and its sequel, Bridgeland Volume 2, are his debut graphic novel series with Tangled Web, inspired by Caribbean folklore, his most recent foray into the medium. Everybody, please help me welcome my very special guest and friend, Mr. Marc Gibson. Marc!
Hey, Don, how you doing, man?
How's
Listen,
it
man,
going?
I appreciate being here. I appreciate, you make my bio sound really good. I love that. Thank you.
No, it is awesome, chock full of so much stuff, and I appreciate you, my man, coming on to the show, being a part of the Color Motion family, and gracing us with your presence, man. So how is it in Barbados?
I think it's good. You know, things aside, COVID for sure. COVID is still here with us. People like to pretend that it isn't, but you know, it's still a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, this year so far for my team has been pretty good. Uh, we've done some stuff. So like I said, the Goddard's Enterprises. Yep, it's a mouthful. Goddard's Enterprises Limited 100th Anniversary Entrepreneurship Awards Competition. Yeah, that's a lot. But
It's a
Goddard's
mouthful.
Enterprises is one of the major companies here in the region. They're here in Barbados. They're spread out through other territories in the region, and they've got all kinds of things under their belts, like distribution and so on, catering companies, all kinds of stuff. Uh, so that award is a pretty big deal because Goddard's wanted to really give back to in a major way, in a meaningful way, and they look back to their roots. 100 years ago, that their founder supposedly walked several kilometers from where he was living in the country into Bridgetown, and got his start. And over the next century, this huge company got built out. So they decided to kind of give back, to kind of look back at how they started, and to look to give entrepreneurs, not just here in Barbados, but in the region, as well as in Latin America, a chance to do something as well to get a start out. So
Yeah.
for us, Alluhwi Comics, we were one of just 10 finalists, and this is the first stage. We won. There are two other stages. The next stage kicks off in October this year, followed by the final stage where we'll be down to a grand finalist. For our stage two, they're going to cut it down to just three startups. So, you know, once we do everything that we need to do, I'm sure that we'll be there um, on the next stage.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And to that point, do you feel like the islands, Barbados, and all the other islands are really now starting to you know uh, come up as far as creators, comic industry, and really starting to you know make a presence?
In some ways, yeah. This is weird dissonance, right? Where you know you don't have to explain who Superman is or who Batman is. The Marvel movies, these streaming shows, have been pretty popular here in Barbados for sure. In conversations I've had with other creators through the region, just as popular. But there's this weird thing where it seems like making a career out of these things you're passionate about, out of these things that um, people enjoy throughout the world, that there are people out there in the world who make careers from these things. It seems like so impossible to make a career out of comic books,
Yeah.
out of animation, games, that kind of stuff. It seems rare to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And well, I mean, do you feel like because here in the states we got all these companies, Disney, DC, this and that. Do you feel like that's because, like I said, in islands, like the islands, or over in Africa, or in other areas, you don't have like the big studios like we have over here in the U.S., which is why it seems like it's really a little more farther fetched or farther out of reach than say if you were here in the states.
Part of it is definitely perception, where for me growing up, at 10, I really, really fell in love with comic books. That was one summer. I still think of it as perhaps my best summer ever. And I was literally, presented with this huge suitcase filled with comic books, right? Not to keep, not to keep. They weren't mine. But I got to read them as long as it was, careful, and respectful.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Well, my mother would talk about how I always used to like pulling out the comic strips from the newspaper. That summer was the first time I was really presented with this very choice. I mean that suitcase had in everything. It had in DC Comics, had in Marvel Comics, Superman, Flash, X-Men,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. So I was able to just act like when I started, I was just picking stuff up. First thing I put my hands on, I was reading it. And I realized, wait a minute, this issue it came like a little before this one, and I went spent some time, sorted everything out into stacks by number, by title, until I could really get that reading experience, right? And I went through and I'm reading all this stuff, and my mind was blown. All kind of characters I never heard of, alongside some of those, that were more familiar that you would see in like cartoons or whatever. And it was great. But the thing is, at 10, I couldn't imagine myself creating that stuff. I mean, at 10, I knew enough to realize that there had to be somebody out there who was making this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't appear out of thin air. But I didn't see myself. I didn't see myself doing that. I didn't see myself writing or drawing comics. And the perception from my parents was that's childish, juvenile stuff
Yeah.
that's nothing to really spend your time on. You know,
Yeah.
um, very much a push towards doing well academically, and I never liked school. So that was always kind of rough. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
there wasn't a vision that we could create that kind of stuff
Yeah.
when I was 10. So it took me like decades to even get to where I am now. You know,
Yeah.
um, you mentioned my first graphic novel series, Bridgeland. That started out actually as a screenplay for a feature length film, and even that was a bit of a struggle. And I was like, you know what? I put a lot of energy into this. I wanna make something happen with it. So I said, hey, you've always liked comic books. You can't draw stickmen. You struggle with that. So, you at least let's see if you can who are your friends that are into comics, who are your friends that draw that kind of stuff, and go through that process.
Yeah.
uh, so that led, as they say, one thing to the next.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. It's interesting. I think, you know, I guess, your parents are like most parents. They don't think that it's something that you can make a living out of. And actually,
Hmm.
comics is a $1 billion industry, and it's a really
Yeah.
big industry. But it is hard to fathom that, when you're young, that that's
Hmm.
something that you can do and you can be doing. Um, and it's funny, like you said, I think everybody that's come on, pretty much everybody that's come on when they were a kid, they just thought comics and animation just, they didn't know you could make a living, or somebody was creating
Yeah.
it. Somebody had to create it and make it. And people can and make a really good living doing it. Um, you didn't have any illusion of doing anything else, even though, like I said, your mother wanted you to, get better academically or kind of go that route. You didn't have any kind of desire to go down any other path other than comics and anime and writing and graphic novels.
There were the things that I liked, and then there were the things that I was good at. Like I said, I never really liked school. Part of that was the actual like school experience.
Yeah.
There were subjects that I liked and I was good at. So I always liked anything to do with reading. Um, and writing was something that I kind of into. So we had English was split into English language, which is grammar and comprehension, that kind of stuff, and English literature, which is reading books. The Silver Sword was one that we did. We did Shane as well.
Yeah.
Um, at some point in secondary school. I like geography. My all-time favorite teacher. kind of broke my heart because she was my teacher in first form. So I'm coming straight out of primary school into secondary school. My first year in secondary school had this teacher, Fatima Patel, and she made geography come alive, right? And secondary school was my first real exposure in geography. So primary school is like the simpler stuff. So math for sure, English for sure. That was largely it. But secondary school was this whole new experience with it, with piled on all these other subjects, you know. But Miss Patel, she made geography come alive. And my first year, I was like, my eyes were open, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then at the end of that first year, she was like, well, yes, she got some bad news. Unfortunately, she is leaving her position to go and study. I was like, no. Why are you
No,
leaving?
no,
You know,
no. Yeah,
because she was really really good at
yeah,
at her subject,
yeah.
and her own passion for geography came through, right? And I never after she left, I was heartbroken. I never did as well with geography. The crazy thing is, I actually met her after leaving school, and became friends. I was like, this is weird. I still call her Miss Patel. Like, you know, we've had all these conversations about books, and
Yeah.
she's been really a big fan of mine. She was one of the first people to publish my first graphic novel, which is mind blowing when I think about it. And I still, to this day, would call her Miss Patel. Um,
That
we've
shows
worked,
respect there. That's like I said. That shows a lot of respect, and it's
yeah,
great
yeah,
that you have a
But she,
teacher like that.
if I had her throughout my secondary school career, man, geography for sure would be different. But so there was geography. There were things like English. Later in secondary school, I started doing things like technical drawing, which I liked and I could do. Uh, um, but I so that had me thinking about things like architecture and stuff. But I never really had. I wasn't like a lot of people or some people who would have had this plan laid out. Like they watch something on TV and say they want to be a firefighter,
Yeah.
or they want to be an astronaut or whatever. I never really had that. And for better or worse, I didn't have my path laid out with my parents. Some people have that, encounter that,
Yeah.
where their parents say, "Hey, you're going to be a doctor," and they literally follow these steps one by one. And they go through and they study sciences, and they study everything they need to do, and they go straight into residencies and med school and so on. I never had that. So for better or worse, I've always been a little envious of people who had that, who had a path laid out for them.
Yeah.
In some ways, that is simpler. You just gotta follow those steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, you know, for you growing up, like you said, you got a bunch of comic books. Were comics, a big thing growing up that a lot of kids had, or just were really into, over there in Barbados?
so, like anything else, comics definitely had a following. I think comic books here in Barbados were always kind of niche, right? So you would find somebody who read comic books. I know people who got into comic books because of their parents, which I think is really cool. One guy, he said that his dad just gave him like a bag of comic books. And that's
Yeah.
how he got into it. So here in Barbados, people know comic books, at least in this broad general sense, right? They know who Superman is, they know who Batman is, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, but there was always this perception that comic books was one of those childish things that you put away when you become a man or a woman.
Yeah.
So I keep encountering people, and they're like, "Oh, I haven't read a comic book since I was a child," that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, for all of my life, and definitely before me, there was always people who read comic books. Right now, like growing up, you could find. I used to be able to see comic books almost everywhere. So you would see them on the little spinner racks in pharmacies.
Yeah.
You would see them on racks in supermarkets right there by the checkout. You would see them in bookstores. But these days, it's pretty rare to see comic books outside of comic book stores.
Really, really interesting. And it's funny, and we're going to talk, like I said, a lot more about, your app and, online comic. What was, for you, the driving force for starting this comic publication digitally on a phone and with the app? What was the thing that said, I need to do this?
It was that realization that the things I was accustomed seeing during my childhood I wasn't seeing anymore. So here in Barbados we had like two local comic book shops when I was in my teens. Uh, Vortex I think was one, and Comic Craze was another one. Comic Craze by name still exists today, but they sell games now. It's
Mm-hmm.
really weird. That throws me off. But we had at least two comic book stores here, like just dedicated to pure comic books. But what got me started with Alluhwi Comics is realizing that one, after going through the process of publishing my own, I had a hell of a time doing that. You know, bookstores here, they were like, no. Or the best you would get is, oh, we'll take it on consignment, and then it's down like some back corner of the store where there's no
Yeah.
traffic. Um, and from speaking to other creators, like AnimeCon is like a sweet spot for me as a fan, as well as being a creator, because that's like your whole tribe in one place for like 2 days, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but going to conventions like that, I've been to AnimeCon Expo here in Barbados. I've been to Alias Entertainment Expo in Trinidad, and realizing that across these two countries, it was kind of the same. Where outside of these events, you have people who are creating a lot of cool stuff. But if you are a fan, if you're even interested, you have a hell of a time getting that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, you gotta do something better.
Yeah.
Um, why if you're a creator, why should you fight up with a store who just isn't interested?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and those conversations kept happening, kept popping up, no matter who we talk to, no matter where. And instead of going to these conventions in person, speaking to other people online, really, yeah, I'm creating this cool stuff. Why haven't I never heard about it? And they're like, oh well, I'm like, all right, cool. Something we gotta do something different. So I figured, was the connective tissue here? Everyone has phones, everyone has tablets. That is only increasing. There's more and more content going to mobile than ever before. Like, okay, what if we can get all these cool comics and strips from the Caribbean onto people's phones? Forget stores, forget that struggle. If you want to read it, you pay like less than the price of coffee here, and you can read to your heart's content.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alluhwi Comics was born. I like writing. I like creating stuff. I always struggle with naming stuff. And Alluhwi Comics is simply saying the phrase "all of us," put in a little dialect in there, all of we, and that's it. Say that really fast. All of we.
Oh,
That's it.
awesome, awesome. And we're gonna take a little look at Alluhwi Comics in a minute. But I had this conversation with Dion, who was a guest on season one of my show, and he was kind of doing the same thing, putting comics digitally on the phone. And I was asking the question, how do you think that? Do you feel that they both work together because of people are kind of used to the hard copy, and
Hmm.
whether that's just a collector's thing of somebody that's a collector that is really going to be kind of interested in the hard copy, you know, the traditional style comic book, flipping through that type of thing. How do you feel like now consuming content? Um, And do you feel like it's a older, younger generation type of thing, of where more of the older generation is more prone to, I rather have the traditional hardcover copy of a comic book collectible style thing?
I think there's still quite a lot of interest in having physical comic books, right? I can tell you as a creator, having my actual graphic novel in hand made it more real. And I know that's a similar experience that a lot of creators have. But the reality is you have a lot of people today who are on the fence or who are interested in reading comics. And the question is, how do they get it?
Yeah,
And if you can just say, hey, download this app, check it on your phone, I think that definitely boosts adoption. That definitely makes it easier. Like the number of women who are reading comic books today, females who are reading comic books, has spiked because they didn't have to navigate, the comic book store, which are usually male spaces,
yeah,
um, and all the discomfort or whatever unfamiliarity that comes with that. And when you've seen comics going digital, you see a lot more women reading because it's like, hey, I can get on my phone, on my tablet, cool, and they just do that. If you look at the darker side of comics, if you look at piracy, piracy is huge for comic books,
yeah,
and that is because people want to read the stuff, right? If you look back at when Netflix first started, piracy piracy numbers were huge
yeah,
because you've got like all these different cable services and you got to pay this buddy here and you got to pay this buddy there. And then Netflix came along and was like, hey, you can watch this stuff on your phone, your tablet, on your computer. And then if you look at studies, the numbers in terms of piracy that just plummeted because people realize I can pay this one thing and read and watch, whatever they want.
yeah,
So it's a similar approach for all the comics. We looked at not just the comic industry, we looked at entertainment in general. We looked to see what the trends for that kind of things are. We've used Netflix as a case study in terms of delivering content globally using technology, and the the interest for comics is definitely there. The hurdle that we need to get past is how do we get this stuff in people's hands.
yeah,
Digital first is great, and that's where all the comics is oriented to. But then there are still opportunities for print. If people, I have found people even with we did our first crowdfunder in March, yeah, February to March, and we had people who wanted to get these physical books, but they still want to read it. And you had some people that are like, all right, I'll take two of these. One for me to read and then one for me to like pack away
yeah,
and floss it. And that's still very much a thing. It's not quite the speculators market like it was back in the 90s, but you still have people that's like, I like this thing, so I want to keep it. Can I still read it? Yes. So if you can read your comic in digitally, if you can read it like today in digitally and get it in print like tomorrow or next month, I think there's still quite a lot of appeal in doing that.
yeah, yeah. Also, do you feel like it really helps those creators that may, like you experienced earlier, having a hard time getting their content out to people, or getting their um, their book or their uh, comics to, say, some of the bigger ones, that gives them an outlet that allows them
Hmm.
to get their content out? Do you feel like that also helps those up and coming ones that, hey, I got a comic book, but like you said, comic book stores aren't gonna want to put it in unless it's a big title, or if they do, it's on a consignment basis, and then they're not giving it prime space type of thing.
Yeah, I looking at the business side of comics has been educational. The way like companies like DC and Marvel, the strategy they use to get their stuff out there. the struggles that a lot of local comic book stores then have to deal with based on that. So hey, you've got Superman #1 coming out, and some small retailer going to order 200 copies. Let's say he moves 50 of those, he's still got the rest there, you know.
Yeah.
The thing, and a lot of these companies, like through physical distribution, aren't going to take those books back necessarily. With digital, you get it out there in front of people, and if you look at places like Tumblr, even Instagram, people are using these digital platforms to get their content out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of creators are focused on getting their stuff out there first, building that following, and then trying to figure out how to monetize it.
Yeah.
So with Alluhwi Comics, what we looked at is when we started trying to figure out how to monetize. That's why we've gone with a subscription model, a kind of a la carte access to the content. You like it, you read. So if you want to binge the content that's there in the weekend, hey man, that's up to you. If you want to read an issue a week or whatever is there, again at your own pace, because that I think is one of the positives about going digital, where for the fan, you don't have to stress. It's like, oh my God, it's Wednesday. I gotta, look at my pull list. I gotta get out of the store. I gotta put on my mask and I gotta wash my hands and all that stuff. Like with COVID, a lot of bad happened with COVID. But if you're looking at the entertainment industry, entertainment just kept chugging along, man. Yeah, there were hiccups with the actual production side. So you saw it for movies. You saw that with comic books. Companies like DC would have furloughed a bunch of people for that. But then in a lot of cases, companies that kind of look forward realize, hey, if my illustrator has his own laptop and I'm paying him, he got his own internet, he can still work. He can still be productive. He can still create content. So people were still reading comics. I mean, like 2021 was like one of the biggest years in comic books globally, full stop. Yeah. Comics made more money on a global level than ever before in the middle of a pandemic. And that has to say something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it did show a lot of companies and businesses that they can still function and be profitable working remotely and having their people work remotely, and still, they had to get the logistics down and things like that, but there was still this potential to be profitable. And we were talking about this a little before the show as well.
Mm-hmm.
People are, I think it gave people this idea now of how they really wanted to live their life, whether it was the commute back and forth to work, whether it was sitting in an office 8 hours a day, that type of thing, and still now being able to produce in the comfort of their own home and still, like I said, make a living and a company and business still be profitable.
Yeah. So there's been so much, and we were talking about this before the show started. There's been this rush here in Barbados for sure to go back to normal, whatever that means, right? From a business standpoint, a lot of it has been pushing people to come back into the office. So you got to struggle with that commute again. You've got to, so for some people, if you are catching bus, if you're taking public transport, in a lot of cases, if you need to get to work by, let's say, 8:30, you're leaving home at like 6:30 in the morning, and you're getting up maybe an hour before that to get ready. And that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So much of your time spent is getting there.
Getting there home. Yeah, you spend on the commute. And I think, like I said, I think that's what a lot of people were thinking about during that time when they were home. It's like, man, why am I spending 3-4 hours just in the commute and then sitting at home and that type of thing? And I don't know if this is the case over in Barbados and some of the other islands. I know a lot of companies now are doing kind of hybrid positions. You come into the office a couple of days and then the rest of the week you work at home, type of thing. But they found that, like I said, people are, more productive, have been more productive in their kind of home environment if they give them that option.
Yeah, it didn't work for everyone. Like here in Barbados during the pandemic, we were still trying to do school, and it was shocking to me when I heard from some teachers that instead of a full day of school, it was like 2 hours. What happens for the rest of the time? Um, and one of my teammates, we actually did a pilot comic book course last summer. And when we were getting ready to do that, the organization we were working with, we were like, hey, let's do this as like a 6 hour program per day. Like, oh no, children don't want to be online for a whole day. And I'm like, so what are they doing on their phones? What are they doing on their tablets? That doesn't make sense, you know. And the cool thing with that course, we finally did it. It ended up being 3 hours per day, 3 days a week for 3 weeks, right? And we are sharing knowledge and giving helping these 11 to 14-year olds build the skill where they produce their first comic. And that was an amazing experience from the role of the facilitator, where I'm, sharing what I know about comics, sharing my passion for it, and seeing it reflected in these little children. This one young lady, Elisa Jean, she was literally like one of the smallest people there. She was literally one of the youngest, and she ended up being one of the biggest stars in all of this. She led her team, and they pretty much ran with the entire final project, which was originally supposed to be a 5-page comic book. And figuring, hey, we bought so little time to do this thing. And she comes back to me like near the end of the course, and she's like, "Sir, my team and I feel that we can tell a better story in 10 pages." And I'm like, "Wait, hold on. You're literally doubling your workload, right?" And like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So you know that you're giving yourself more work, right? Like, uh-huh. All right. If you think you can do it, go ahead, and I'll tell you no. And I didn't want to spend any time like selling these children short because they're children,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
because this is their first time doing this thing. They had fun with the coursework. Uh, a lot of them really took to it. I mean, there were some who were there for other reasons. This one boy who was nuts about animation, and I'm like, this is a course on comics, right? He's like, yes, yes, sir, but
It's a gateway.
can,
It's a gateway.
can I email you so you can tell me more information about animation? I'm like, no. But anyway, this little girl, Lisa, she led her team, and she was great. Her team were great. They came up with this story on their own, mind you. Um, Myself and my co-facilitator, Suzanne, one of my team members, we didn't guide them on the story they would tell. They came up with this thing on their own, which was this story about an anteater living in this magical forest who, one, he doesn't like to eat ants, but he loves to eat bamboo, and he wants to be a chef. I kid you not. That is what they came up with. That is the plot right there in a nutshell. And I'm like, all right.
Oh
And the
man.
thing is with this story, Don, this story has so many layers. And I'm like, are there really 11 to 14? I mean, all right. So, anteater who wants to be a chef, he doesn't like eating ants. He likes eating bamboo. His wife, who is not the best wife, she gives him this ultimatum. She's like, "Hey, you need to be a proper anteater and eat some ants, dude. If you don't eat ants, you gotta leave my house." And I'm like,
Oh man, that's some layers for sure.
you know, and and they told this story in 10 pages. He goes, he gets kicked out by his wife. He travels through the forest. He has these little mini adventures. He meets his childhood friend who's a panda, who actually, got him into eating bamboo in the first place. And they go back. The panda's family has this restaurant, and the guy trains to become a chef. And at the opening, where the guy's, his big debut as a chef, his wife shows up and she's like, "Oh my God, I didn't understand, and I'm so sorry." And you would think that because their children's story will have this nice, happy ending. Nah, listen, Winfrey, that's the name of the anchor. Winfrey was like, "Nope, I am not taking you back. Sorry, I am a chef now." I was like, "What?"
Oh man.
Seriously,
Oh man. You gotta love the
but
imagination of a child when you don't cap them and just let them run with stuff.
yeah, when you just give them tools, man, when you just give them information, um, I think that's part of the challenge with formal education, school. I think school is great. I don't want anybody to say otherwise. I
Yeah.
think school is necessary, but school is so very structured, right? And yes, I think it's better now than when I was at school, where there's an awareness of persons learning differently, of persons with learning disabilities and so on, and that there are more ways to learn, right? But I still feel like school is super structured. So with this course that we did last summer, we just gave them information. We gave them a broad framework. This is how you structure a story. These are things like shape language to create characters and how to build world and so on. And they took that information and they ran with it, which was amazing. And I kept thinking afterwards, like, oh my God, where would I be if I had something like that when I was 10?
Yeah.
If I had that opportunity, a chance to learn how to do this thing I'm so passionate about,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
go from consumer to creator.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's funny that you kind of told that because I was listening to a video the other day. It was a self development video, Bob
Mm-hmm.
Proctor, and he was talking about how he felt that schools should really be first teaching kids to embrace their imagination because that's where things and that's where you really start to discover things, create things. And he felt like you were saying, schools are so structured that they start stripping away a kid's just imagination of just dreaming about things and bringing that dream into reality, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
may be. So I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of kids um, need to and people for sure need to embrace their imagination because
Yeah.
that's where things come from. They first start in your imagination before they become reality, whatever it is. Everything we've had and everything that there is started from a thought that somebody had that
Mm-hmm.
any other
Yeah.
person would have thought they were crazy doing. But a story like that, like I said, you have to love a kid's imaginations. Like I said, when you just unfetter them and let them come up with stuff, they
Mm-hmm.
come up with some of the wildest things for sure. What do you feel like um, some of the stories that would come from Barbados in particular, but the islands. I mean, what do you feel? I mean, your platform is really highlighting the Caribbean, stories. What do you feel are some of the stories that you've seen that we haven't been exposed to over here yet, and that are just great stories?
So growing up, Barbados is an interesting place because we're kind of between uh, Britain and the U.S. In a lot in terms of like culture and influences and that kind of thing. So Barbados was colonized by the British, and for the entire period held by the British. So it's not like some other territories which would have swapped hands between like
Yeah,
British and French and so on. But there's been a lot of like cultural influence from the U.S. as well due to proximity, right? So growing up, I would have read stories like Hardy Boys. I would have read Nancy Drew. I would have read Archie comics, Enid Blyton um, stories. So for us here in Barbados, we've got a very clear idea of stories from other places. So for me growing up, I wasn't exposed to Barbadian folklore or Caribbean folklore, um, the equivalent of fairy tales for
Yeah.
us, right? Uh, and it wasn't until I was much older, I think in my 20s, I was reading like one of the first issues in sorry first books in the Dresden Files. So I don't know if you know Dresden Files.
Mm-mm.
Jim Butcher. This story about this wizard, an actual wizard named Harry Dresden, living in contemporary Chicago. So he's going around, part detective, part wizard, throwing magic and spells and that kind of stuff. And after reading that book, I was like, this is pretty cool. And it got me to thinking, what would that look like in a Barbadian setting, from a
Yeah.
Barbadian perspective? What would that look like from a Caribbean perspective? So I went and I started doing a bunch of research, and I realized my eyes were open to Caribbean folklore, and we've got all of these because of the influences from the British and the French and Spanish and so on. We've got this cohobla of influences kind of baked in to our culture. So we've got characters like uh, the Sukiyant, known in some countries. Here in Barbados, we call it a hag, and the hag or the Sukiyant is always this woman, and I don't know why, but in a lot of Caribbean folklore, these creatures are female more often than not. But so the hag, she is she's like a part witch, part like vampire kind of. So the hag is distinctive because it's usually this old woman, and you will see her any day. But at night, she would peel off her skin, and in some variants, she would like, be able to fly through the air as this ball of fire, and slip under people's doorknobs and through keyholes, under the door, and slip through keyholes and that kind of stuff. And she would feed on people. In some countries, she would feed on them like blood, kind of like a vampire. In some, she would like kind of like drain people's essence and energy and that kind of stuff. And then we have other characters like that. So here in Barbados, Barbados has this unique one called the Heartman. So in context, kind of like Jason Voorhees, kind of.
Yeah.
But in short, the Heartman would have, made this deal with dark forces, the devil or what have you. Um, and it's for the usual stuff like, riches and wealth and that kind of thing. Um, and in Barbados, Heartman, there isn't a Heartman variant in other Caribbean countries. So I don't know what it is about Barbados that generated this particular character. But even here in Barbados, and we are 166 square miles, so that's kind of small. We fit into Texas, I don't know how many hundreds of times.
Yeah.
But there's this northern variant of the Heartman and a southern variant. I don't remember which is which, but one of them drives this big black car, like a hearse, and another one drives this small, it's either a red or a blue car. And he would go along and people's hearts. So people who do bad things, children. So much of the folklore praise these creatures prey on children is disturbing. So we've got creatures like that. Here in Barbados, you also have steel donkey, which in a lot of cases is literally what it sounds like, a donkey made of steel that rolls around at night, creating this racket, and it usually has like chains hanging from it, and it breathes fire, and the eyes are big red balls of fire. Um, we've got other characters like in the Caribbean, like Moongazer, which is this guy, this really tall guy, like 40 feet, who is entranced with the moon, and he usually stands straddling a road. And if you're foolish enough to pass through his legs, he just closes them, you end up squashed. You know,
We
um,
definitely got a lot of stories to tell for sure. And I think, like I said, your class really illustrates the point that there are a lot of creative, like I said, up and coming
mhm,
kids and people that, like I said, just need the opportunity and the encouragement to tell and create their stories out there. Um,
Yeah.
do you feel like there's, from our point of view, or any misconceptions about, just the kind of content that would come, or do you feel like companies, it's going to take companies such as, some of the bigger studios here really investing in, say, programs there or schools there? Because I'm assuming that, well, I won't assume, but do you have a lot of schools and courses there that will, like the ones that you did, allow kids the opportunity to get exposed to comic books, cartoons, and even the one that wanted to do animation, just get into having the exposure there?
So there there are initiatives, various initiatives. So from a governmental developmental standpoint, there's always been this talk about the orange economy, all the creative things. Um, and from speaking to uh, just last year, actually, I had a conversation with the then Minister of Culture here about animation and wanting to push animation forward in Barbados and that kind of stuff. So there's an awareness, and in some cases there are steps to do that. But the reality is, I don't think that we can sit and wait on government, for instance, to do
Yeah,
that. We from our perspective as a small island state, we can't sit and wait on a large company like a Netflix or whoever
yeah,
to do that. I found that the Caribbean is in a lot of ways a kind of lost region where we're not quite big enough in terms of geographical area or population to be distinctive, to stand on our own. So we get lumped in often from like a programming perspective with Latin America, even though a lot of the Caribbean region is English speaking.
yeah,
So that is in some ways a disservice there, right? So what I think we need to do is to get started on our own. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing here with Alluhwi Comics, with a platform like Alluhwi Comics itself. Uh, so we can be a beacon for our creators here, um, no matter what age they're at. I've had people who, because of COVID, are now suddenly interested in maybe they should start writing again, because they've got time for whatever reason. And I think it's important to have those kind of homegrown uh, beacons to to draw people's attention. Say, hey, here's an example of what we can do, right?
yeah,
And then that kind of helps on a wider level, because then someone can look and say, hey, here's this platform from the Caribbean with all these Caribbean comic books. I didn't know this existed.
yeah,
Let's have a look at that.
yeah,
So when you look at like there being deals, let's say Netflix, for example, where they're looking into Africa,
yeah,
and in a lot of cases, they were usually people on the ground in Africa doing stuff, creating content, telling their stories,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah, now, and I've had a number of guests on, from Africa talking about that very thing. And to what you were saying, not waiting on companies or the government to kind of subsidize or help to elude it. I think this time that we live in, with all the technology that we have, apps like such as yourself, Instagram, YouTube, you have all these places now that allow you to allow the content creator to get their content out there to start building a following, for sure.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
going to take a quick look at the app here. But everybody, if you're just jumping on and tuning in, we're having a fun conversation with my friend Marc Gibson here of Alluhwi Comics. Make sure that, again, you jump in. engage with us and let us know how you're liking it so far. But let's take a quick look at the comic. Awesome. Alluhwi Comics. Definitely, like I said, something that's necessary for, the creator to get as another avenue of getting their work out there. Um, what do you feel? I mean, obviously, like we were talking about earlier, everybody's familiar with the you know, the main ones, Superman, Batman, Spider Man, all the ones that are out there. What do you feel like the industry is kind of missing today in comics?
I think the well, the perception is that the industry comics is this one thing, right? So I saw the report last week, about this week, that Charlemagne the God is starting up his own company. He's linking up with Kevin Guro.
Yeah,
Um,
Kevin Graveau, which is somebody, Kevin.
yeah,
If you're watching this, we still need to get you on the show for sure. But
you know,
yeah, I saw that post.
and they're looking to do a superhero universe. I think we need more creators, yeah, but comic books, like the big two, Marvel and DC for sure, make the average person think that comic books is just superheroes, right? It's just fights and tights and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Uh, but then when you look at Image, and other companies, you've got all of these different types of stories being told.
Yeah.
And then you look at like the pure indie stuff. You're finding stories told in the comic book format that cover everything, man.
Yeah.
And but then you look at manga over from Asia. You've got comics for everybody.
Yeah.
You've got comics for children. You've got comic books for adults. And the thing with Japan is visual storytelling is baked into who they are. You
Yeah.
know, so before comics, before animation, they were telling stories visually. Through paintings and stuff, and that has carried through into the modern day. So you could find people like going to like a vending machine type stuff and buying comics like, okay, I want to read something that's slice of life, something that's silly, that's
Yeah.
comedy. I want to read high fantasy. I want to read sci-fi, and I think that's what's missing from comics over here, where you're seeing more variety.
Yeah.
Where so I've had this conversation with new people to comics, and they're like, "So, are you telling just superhero stuff?" Like, no, this is a crime thriller we're telling. This is a fantasy story. This is horror, and you're seeing that coming out from the creators, where
Yeah.
um, I could probably count on one hand the number of pure superhero stories coming out of Caribbean creators. But then you're seeing stories that cover this broad spectrum,
Yeah.
and stories that reflect who we are. So the crowdfunder, we launched in February this year, our first crowdfunder to support one of our creators, really cool guy, Nigel Lynch. He was doing his latest book, and Nigel he is prolific, man. He is one of the people that I look up to in terms of being a comic creator in this space, right? And he's part of a collective called Beyond Publishing Caribbean. But for his new book, he found a creator from artist from outside the region. Nigel is a lot like me. He's a writer, and he was telling this story, the Diary of the Stray Dogs, the Wounded, which is again a story of layers. So there's this fairy tale influence there that when you read it, if you pick up the breadcrumbs, you'll be like, oh my god, this is so cool, right? So I'm not going to spoil that there, but he's telling this story in this kind of like cyberpunk world, this sci-fi world. It's this exploration of this character called Shani Belcourt, and how she ended up becoming a mercenary. You know, so she's working in this near future world. She is this pilot for this mercenary company, and she's just living her best life. You know, she's partying. She's in a relationship with our co-workers, and then that just all goes like horribly wrong, horribly sideways. But the fascinating thing there, it's a look at a near future world from the mind of somebody from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Which is different. So even though Nigel would have collaborated with an artist and colorist from outside the region, the way he built his story, the influence of being from the Caribbean is still very much felt. The language the characters use in this story, very much from the Caribbean perspective. Who this character is, the entire world he's built, again, from a very Caribbean sensibility, you know, and I think we definitely need more of that.
Yeah. And to your point, no, I think you made a great point as far as I think what we're used to here in the States when you say comics and comic books, Marvel, DC, the superhero type of thing, and it's the independent creators that I've come across, whether it be on the show that I've had that are doing these outside, just different style, you know, whether they're detective comic books, whether they're horror comic books. I know Marcus Williams and his partner, who I had on season 1, they're doing like a futuristic take on the Tuskegee Airmen style story. So I think it's going to come from the independent creator where you're getting all these different styles and different flavors of
Yeah.
stories that aren't just the typical, like you said, tights and flights and fights type of stories,
Mhm.
which, you know, we love. I mean, you know, you love them,
Yeah.
but there's so much more to life than just that. It's just the everyday style of storytelling. So I'm just super encouraged with all the stories and creators that I've come across independently wise, albeit it's very hard and a very tough road as an independent getting your thing out there, you know, unless you're Disney or unless you're DC or comics like that and got the funding and the distribution and all of that.
Mhm.
But the stories are just so much more wildly creative. Uh,
Yeah.
Man, this guy, I'm gonna give a shameless plug. Brian Williams uh, created
Harlem
some
Shadow.
dark
Yeah.
Harlem Shadow and Lucius Hammer. I love these comics when he sent them to me and was reading them, and it's just like I said, just not your typical style comics. And I think, like I said, I'm encouraged at this time because there is this proliferation of outlets for creators to get their content out there. But now you're starting to see these creators start to craft their own stories and much more engaging stories.
Yeah. Speaking of plugs, yeah,
Yes,
here we
plug
go.
that. Plus
So,
that.
yeah, so this
Stray
is
dogs.
Nigel Lincoln's book, The Diary of the Stray Dogs, The Wounded. This was the book for our crowdfunder that we had. We started this crowdfunder in February. By the end of the first week, it was fully funded. So that is amazing for us for our first crowdfunder. So Alluhwi Comics, we want to do more of that. We want to make sure that we can work with our creators to help them tell their stories, help them get their stories out there.
Yeah.
So for us, like this book here, Alluhwi Comics doesn't own this, man. This is Nigel's book entirely. Um, we are just working with him to help him get it out
Out
there.
there. Yeah.
So this crowdfunder was about doing that. I am really, really, really ecstatic by the support we brought in for that crowdfunder to
Yeah.
get it funded. So again, let me say this publicly to any of you out there. Thank you so very much for making our first crowdfunder a success. We look to do more of those in the future.
Definitely looking forward to it as more, and I definitely want to get a copy of that, and because it looks like an amazing title. What for you? What's been the biggest lesson along in this journey so far that you've learned?
So in this journey, the biggest lesson is as a creative entrepreneur, I know where I want to get to. I've got an idea of where I want things to go. How to get there is the challenge. So it's like imagine you're taking a trip, right? And let's say you want to go to uh give me a destination in the US. Let's say Yellowstone Park, right? Let's say
Yeah,
you've never
yeah.
been to
So
Yellowstone. You want to go there. You want to see this geyser erupting, whatever you want to
yeah, old
camp
guys.
there, but you don't know how to get there. You don't know what buses go there. You don't know, what roads go there. You don't know if there's a flight that goes there. That has been my experience in terms of building this stuff up. And again, for me, I didn't have any of this in mind. I didn't say like when it was I want to have my own platform or anything like that. It's been definitely a journey in itself. So I got a clear idea of where I want to go. The challenge is figuring out how to get there, um,
Yeah,
and that's been my experience.
yeah, and and it's funny. Like I said, you said that as well because I think that's the biggest thing of a creator and self development. As long as you know the destination of where you want to go, you'll figure out all the steps in between. They'll come to you. It's just the ones that don't know where they want to go wind up
Yeah,
anywhere. So as long as you have a
yeah.
fixed destination on where you're wanting to go, then you're way ahead of the game for sure. We're going to throw a few comments up for sure. Yeah, it is awesome work, Demille. Some
Thank you,
great,
thank you.
great work, and man, looking forward to so much more coming from Alluhwi. Mr. Garon, I appreciate you tuning in there, my man. Definitely down what it do, Mr. Garon. I appreciate you showing up for sure. Um, do you look to um, what do you see as the kind of the future of Alluhwi Comics? Just expanding even further out of the Caribbean, or keeping it kind of the Caribbean, or say just any independent creator, wherever they may be, or what do you feel like you're kind of wanting to take Alluhwi Comics?
So from the start, our platform is geared towards Caribbean comic book creators, and definition of Caribbean for us is a bit broad. So if you're born and raised here, if you're living in the region, yeah, you come as Caribbean. If you are one of those people living in like the diaspora hubs, you've got a lot of Caribbean people living in like the US, living in Europe.
Yeah,
There's a saying here that you can find a Bajan anywhere. When this whole Ukraine Russia war kicked off, I was amazed to hear that there was a Bajan living in Ukraine who was looking to get out. And I'm like, that's crazy. So definitely that direction. Also, we're open to content from creators who are creative teams who are at least half from the Caribbean. So let's say you're like me, you're a writer, you're from Barbados, for instance, and you want to hook up with Dawn, who's an illustrator living in the U.S.
Yeah.
You're creating something cool. That is definitely available there. Where do we want to go? Our guiding belief is that reading authentic Caribbean comics should be easy. That is it. So everything we do is about making that easy. Um, the subscriptions to all the comics start at $2.99 US per month. That is it. You can pay for 6 months at a time, you can pay for 12 months at a time, but that's where it starts. And I have people look at me and say, that is so crazy. And I'm like, but yeah,
Cheaper
you
than a
know,
latte. It's cheaper
sure
than
that
a
I love it.
Starbucks coffee, that's for sure.
That's it. But again, that goes towards making it easy. I don't want somebody to have to think about, no matter where they're from,
Yeah.
do I get my coffee or can I get on to all the comics? We don't want to have people with that kind of thinking. We want to make it easy. We want to ensure for us, the future for us is building towards a place where yes, we'll be talking about Superman and Batman. That's not going to change. But then we're going to hear about, a Caribbean comic book character. We're
Yeah.
going to hear about, like right now, actually within the last week, within the last 2 weeks, we actually announced our anthology, our first comic anthology called Caribbean Folklore, Monsters, and Myths. And the
Oh,
idea of that anthology is to simply reimagine or take inspiration uh, from Caribbean folklore and reimagine that stuff for modern audiences. So, we wanna tell those same kinds of stories or those characters from stories. We want to see them in a modern sense. And we're looking for creators from the region and diaspora to do that. So that's where we want to go. We want to see Caribbean comics being part of the everyday conversation for us here in the region. We want to really make an impact in terms of the global industry. So it'll be big. It'll be big for me to have somebody in Japan reading some comic on the all the
yeah.
comics platform and freaking out. The same way how we here in the region go nuts for manga.
Yeah. 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 No, it's definitely, and I think that's the beauty of digital and online. You are able to really track um, who's reading what, or what region is really consuming a lot of the content, and it gives creators another outlet to get their work out there. I always think is a big thing. Like I said, we got all these other online platforms, and like you said, everybody pretty much has a phone and is pretty much doing everything by their phone or by their tablet. So it
Yeah.
is a convenient way of consuming your content. What you know, kind of as we wrap this up, everybody, again, we've been having such a great conversation with my friend Mark, and going to be super excited to get him back on once you do your next Kickstarter launch with your title. But what advice would you give somebody that's kind of looking to do the same thing that you do, knowing what you know now?
What advice would I give? Like, don't give up. That's number one. So for me, I am not going to pretend like getting to this point has been easy. It has not.
Yeah.
Um, like I said when we were talking before the show, so far this year has been pretty positive. So I'm very pleased and I'm very grateful for that. But again, this point hasn't been easy. It requires a certain level of persistence, a certain level of resilience, uh, and being clear in what you want, and it doesn't have to be this big grand thing. You could definitely start small. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to get into comic books, start by reading your script. Start by going to conventions and looking at who else is creating content. As a writer, you gotta read stuff. You gotta read what's out
Yeah.
there. You gotta start reading critically, not as, hey, I think this is cool. Like, how is this story formed? What are the ways you could how would you tell this story differently?
Yeah.
How would you tell your own story? For us, as creators, it's easy to be attracted to what's being done out there. But every single person out there, I don't care who they are. Alex Ross paints, his art is crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But he had to start somewhere, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And still went through
yeah,
his challenges, even through his success. Still had challenges
yeah,
that he was dealing with and stuff. So it's a never ending thing. It's always about how you react to the challenges and things that are gonna come up. That's the
yeah.
defining
And
character.
things are going to come up. That is the truth, man. For us, we were back in November. We were looking to roll out our subscription functionality. So for us, we've taken a very modular approach of building on the platform. So when we did our beta back in 2019, the main thing was, does our upload functionality work? Can a creator from wherever upload their stuff and people can see it? So we've taken that, we've gone step by step. So back in November, we were looking to say, all right, hey, people can now pay to read this stuff, because we were having beta testers at first, we can read, whenever. And for me, I really wanted to make it clear to creators how they get paid. I've told people, hey, I'm not promising you that you can buy your mom a house. I'm not gonna promise that. But I want to put things in place where it's clear that when you upload your stuff, this is how you get paid. People
Yeah.
will pay to read content, and you get paid out of that. That was a big deal for us back in November, and things happened. Our payment partner had a little hiccup on their end, and people couldn't pay for stuff. And I was like, oh my, I was pulling my hair out and freaking out and that kind of stuff. But they were really good. Paddle is the company. They were really good about getting stuff sorted out, and we went through this whole period of making sure on our end that there were no more other things like that could pop up. So just last month we did our first in-person hybrid event. So you can join online or you can join in person. Hosted at one of my favorite hangout spots, Aeon Bar, which is like this unique pop culture themed bar that we have here in Barbados. So we did that there, and we told people, hey, you can now subscribe to read these comics, and that was a huge milestone. It was this really thing that we really enjoyed celebrating because it was another step closer to getting to where we want to be. So yeah, persistence is key. Resilience is key. Figuring out what it is you want to do and where you want to start. And if you, in some cases, you may not know exactly where to start, man, but reach out. I'm grateful to people like you, meeting other people like Dion, meeting creators from across the world, and kind of taking comfort in the fact that all of our stories are very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I'm gonna throw this up here with Mr. Dion or Demille. Can definitely relate to persistence. Like I said, it's just if you want your dream, you're gonna have to work for it. It's never easy. And like I said, you just have to roll with the things that do happen and are going to happen because that's just the nature of succeeding is you have to go through the failures and the hiccups and all the other stuff. No successful person becomes successful without going through their share of failures and problems and challenges for sure.
And also one of the things I think that we don't that we tend to take for granted, team building.
Yeah, Yeah.
I've started pulling my team together. Uh, a bunch of amazing people. So Adriel, he's been there from the start as our web developer. Um, so thanks to Adriel for being a part of this, for signing on to the idea put forward doing this. We got Suzanne. Suzanne is she's been a friend, she's been a mentor. I call her, the creative Swiss Army knife. She does everything: illustration, she does animation, all sorts of stuff.
Oh man.
Um, so Suzanne, we've got Tamara, who is handling marketing for us. So again, helping us get the word out. We've got Sparkleland. She's the most recent person to join our team, and she is our legal consultant, which is great. Um, so
Yeah.
team building is hard. I don't care what anybody says. Team building is hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Finding those right people
yeah,
is
finding
crucial.
those right people. Yeah,
Is
but
definitely
that's
crucial.
the other part of it. Finding your team. It is super rare for anybody to get to a level of success by themselves. Right?
Yeah, I don't subscribe to the self-made person. I think everybody, you hear it. Oh, I'm a self-made business person. I'm a self-made millionaire. This and that. I don't think anybody gets anywhere without some sort of help from somebody, whether it's advice, whether
Hmm.
it's physical help, monetary help, encouragement, a mentor. Somebody along the way has helped you get to where you
Yeah,
are. Um,
yeah,
so, as a self made person, I don't particularly subscribe to that notion, but because everybody gets somewhere with somebody's help along the way, for sure. Definitely make sure that you connect with my man Mark here on all his channels, and we'll take a look at more of his work for sure. You can find him on Instagram at Alluhwi Comics. Check out the website. Download the app at the Google Store. Um, Connect with him on LinkedIn, where I connected with him at. But you can
yeah.
pretty much find him anywhere. We're super looking forward to, like I said, the next Kickstarter, all the things that are going to come out of Alluhwi Comics in any way, again, that the Color of Motion is able to help be a part, promote Alluhwi. We're down in here for you, Mark, because you're part of the Color of Motion family now. So I appreciate, one, you coming on the show, being a part of the show, being a part of the family, and just super excited because I know, like I said, this is technology's not going anywhere. And I'm super excited about just the things that content creators now are going to start getting out and seen for sure. Definitely looking forward again, like I said, to having you back on the show. If you could hang out in the green room for a little bit, for a few minutes while I close out the
Yeah.
show, so we can talk for a second afterwards, I'd appreciate it. Everybody, I hope that you have enjoyed this as much as I have enjoyed it. Make sure, like I said, you go to the Google App Store, download the apps, check out some amazing comics from the Caribbean and the creators there. Support Mark. Let's get it out there because we want to make this a big thing. We need to have more diverse stories and diverse creators out there. That's just necessary. Like I said, while we love DC and the superhero stuff, there are way too many more stories out there that are not being told. And our aim is to really get them out there and to really support the creators such as Mark and some of the others that I've had on that are really doing the work and getting the work out there. So be a part of it. Also, again, be a part of the community. But again, help me thank my guest and friend, Mr. Marc Gibson, for being on the show. Mark, like I said, if you could hang out for a second, but thank you so much, man, for being on the show, brother.
No problem. listen, I appreciate this. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Guys, gals, this has just been an amazing episode. Another one, man. Season 2 is killing it. And I can't thank my friend Marc enough. Like I said, they're doing some amazing stuff over at Alluhwi Comics. Big things are coming from the Caribbean and just outside of the U.S. for sure. So that's what I love about doing this show. Really bringing to you all the creators and stories that are out there that you would not believe for sure. Again, can't thank you enough for tuning in. As always, make sure that you tune in next week because it's going to be another great show for sure. Super excited to be welcoming my friend, longtime friend. I've known Slade for a long time. Slade Diliberto, 3D animator and artist with G-Force Animations. Does some amazing work. So super excited to have my man Slade on, talking and chopping it up in the Color of Motion Studios. Again, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. It's been an amazing day for sure, and an amazing time. Make sure you have a great rest of your Saturday, great rest of the day, great rest of the weekend, and a productive week. Make sure that you tune in, same bat time, same bat channel next week because it's going to be a good one. Cheers, everybody.